So, good afternoon everyone in the chamber and at home watching on live stream. My name is Tom Campbell and I am the Deputy Mayor. We have apologies from Mayor Clark, from Councillor Bond and an apology from Councillor Soper for lateness. Will someone move those, we accept those apologies please? Thank you. So that was Grant and Trish. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. On Zoom, we have Joshua Shaw from Win Williams Law, who is the main author, as I understand it, of the report, independent report, which we received. So you're very welcome, Joshua. Does anyone have a conflict of interest they wish to declare other than the obvious interest that we all share through our association with the Mayor? No? Oh, sorry.
So I work on often share committee meetings with Councillor Pottinger's brother, who is in the room at the moment. So just so, for transparency.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Crackett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to raise, in Councillor Bond's statement, she stipulates and requests whether or not those councillors that were on the Let's Go Invercargill ticket want to declare their interest as a perceived conflict of interest.
So, Councillor, a comment about the ticket first. The ticket was a means by which prospective candidates for councillors could share expenses. It was never a political party of any kind. Since the night of the election, where we had a beer and ziffs, since that night there has never been a meeting or a gathering of any kind of the so-called ticket. So I would just say that first. Second thing I would say is that I'll draw your attention to the fact that that question was actually addressed in page 3 of the Chief Executive's report, and he recommended against appointing an independent decision-making committee on the basis that those known conflicts can be managed. It is actually for each councillor to make a personal judgment on whether they are conflicted, which I'll ask them to do shortly. I would make the point that a councillor who voted to ask the Mayor to resign last month might also feel conflicted. So it is true to say that by virtue of the fact that we have worked with the Mayor for the last 20 months, and by the way I never knew Nobby at all prior to that, the fact that we worked with the Mayor during that time, there are all sorts of things that we could say might cause conflict. The alternative for us, I think, would be that we appoint a separate committee, external committee to hear it, which is allowed in accordance with the Code of Conduct. We could do that, but I note the fact that the Chief Executive has advised against it. So I don't intend to follow that path. I mean, it would be free for you, Councillor Crackett, if you wished, to make a motion to that effect and put it to the floor. But I feel that we are, all of us, conflicted to some extent, but I'm also confident that all of us can manage that.
Thank you. No, I don't feel like it's necessary for us to go down that path, and like you rightly said, it is up to the individual to declare whether or not they feel like they have a conflict perceived or realised. Happy to leave that as it is. I just really wanted to ensure that it was highlighted, especially since Councillor Bond specifically requested that it was asked.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you raising it actually, Councillor, because otherwise it would have sat there and never been aired. So I think it's been good that you've raised that in Ria's behalf. So I will put the question again, given that discussion. I mean, does anyone here have a conflict of interest they wish to declare other than the obvious interest we all share through our association with the Mayor? No. Okay, thank you. So this is a extraordinary meeting of council called to consider a code of conduct complaint made against Mayor Clark by councillors Pottinger and Bond, and that in fact is the only matter on today's agenda. This is an unpleasant part of the role of council, but nevertheless it is part of our job to consider whether a member has breached the code of conduct which was adopted by council at the beginning of this triennium. There is considerable public interest in this meeting, so I will mention that this meeting will be conducted in accordance with the usual council standing orders as well as the code of conduct, both of which can be found on the ICC website for those who wish to go and look. For guidance on this matter, council has received reports from the Chief Executive and from an independent investigator from Wynne Williams Law, who, as I said earlier, is with us today on live stream, Joshua Shaw. All of which reports, as well as the original letter of complaint, have been included with the agenda. We also included in the agenda are recent statements from Mayor Clark, from Councillor Bond and from Councillor Pottinger. However, note that all of those reports and statements are for the guidance of council and not for its instruction. The final decision are for us to make. Councillor Pottinger, you have a right to speak before you retire from the table in accordance with the code. Do you wish to make any other comments?
Yes, I think I will, Chair.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
Yeah, would you like me to speak from here or from?
Oh, look, I think stay where you are.
Okay. Right, so as the Chair mentioned, the committee now has received my brief written statement. So what I am going to say sort of accompanies that. The investigators' report totally justifies and supports the stance Councillor Bond and I took in lodging the complaint. However, lodging this complaint is come at a cost, and to this I am speaking on behalf of Councillor Bond. The two of us personally feel villainised for both wasting council's time and the cost this complaint has incurred. It has been a lonely place for us, but we are both proud to have fulfilled our roles as responsible councillors to the public. I see there is now included in the agenda a written statement from the Mayor. Now, I want to just go back in time a wee bit. On the 17th of April, Councillor Bond and I received an email from the Chief Executive, which was on behalf of the Mayor asking us to withdraw our complaint because of his recent apology in the Southland Times. As you have all read in the investigators' report, that apology had no sincerity and was not sufficient in context to be an apology. Councillor Bond and I replied to the CE that that apology wasn't acceptable, but if the Mayor was to publicly acknowledge that he did breach the code, we would withdraw the complaint. That day, the Mayor declined our offer. But I want to bring the committee's attention to later that month, on the 29th of April, the Mayor was quoted in the Tribune as saying, and this is in respect to Councillor Bond and myself, "They have made some further demands from me, and I am not here to have demands put to me by a couple of councillors. So it will go on to the full investigation. So if this committee was going to debate the dollar cost of this process, then it is my personal belief the accountability of this clearly lies with the Mayor. Now, I see the Mayor is an apology. Ubi est Mayor. Where is the Mayor? Why is he not here to speak to his statement? And why was this statement not given when he had the chance on the 18th of April? I'll leave that with the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Look, can I maybe just say that, in my view, without trying to restrict the comments of any councillor, that it would be unhelpful to get into the issue of cost. It's not what we're here to discuss, so I would suggest that we don't go down the track either.
Excuse me, Chair, I had to raise that because it was used as a weapon against Councillor
No,
Bondi.
I wasn't meaning that and being critical of you, Rangi. I was meaning it in the sense that let's not discuss that amongst the broader committee. I don't think there's any that would be helpful. Okay, thank you. So I will read the Mayor's statement as he's asked me to do. So the Mayor's statement, which is actually part of the agenda and therefore can be referenced, but he has asked me to read it, so I will. So this says, response to Wynne Williams' Code of Conduct investigation. I wish to make the following observations. 1. I accept that the interview with Guy Williams was not good and brought discredit to the council and the wider city. Point 2. Code of Conduct, Section 16 penalties. The code prescribes what penalties are available to elected members by way of penalties. Please note that the list does not include restricting public speaking duties, front-facing juries in inverted commas, as suggested by the investigator. Point 3. I fully accept that my behaviour in this TV interview brings both the mayoral role and council into disrepute. I have undertaken many external presentations over the last 4 years, and while most are well received, I am not perfect, and I accept that this type of interview cannot occur again. I apologise to my colleagues for the impact on them and on the Invercargill public. And the statement ends at that point. So under Standing Orders 15.1, the chairperson may make a recommendation at the outset of a meeting to focus discussion and to propose a resolution, and I intend to do that now. Everyone here will have watched the Guy Williams interview with the Mayor, which was recorded over a year ago. When that was then aired on television in March this year, I think most councillors will have watched with varying degrees of angst, disappointment and even anger. Now, a year after that interview, we have received a report on that as a consequence of a code of conduct complaint raised by 2 councillors. That report finds that the Mayor did materially breach the code of conduct and recommends that he should be asked to apologise and that he should be censured by council. I think it probable that all councillors will agree with those findings and those recommendations. I note that both complainants have said that they would have withdrawn their complaint and in fact offered to do so at an earlier stage had the Mayor offered a full apology. The report goes on to invite councillors to consider whether additional action should be taken. recommendation 10.6a in the report is essentially the same as what Council has already resolved as Resolution 8 at the last Code of Conduct hearing in June. That resolution continues in force, though we know that it is not enforceable by Council. The report goes on to suggest in clauses 10.6b and c that Council also consider whether further action should be taken against the Mayor, including the options of a vote of no confidence or an invitation to the Mayor to resign. Whatever Councillors' personal feelings are, and I know that for some those feelings will be deeply and sincerely felt, I believe we also need to take into consideration whether taking either of those steps would be in the public interest, particularly since neither would have any enforceable impact. We are entering the third year of this triennium, which is the year of delivery. We have planned, budgeted and resourced for an ambitious and challenging programme of work ahead. We should, in my view, consider whether Council's work would be undermined if the relationship between the Mayor and Councillors became fractious and unproductive, as either a vote of no confidence or an invitation to resign would be likely to precipitate. Therefore, my own belief is that public interest would be best served by all of us putting this matter behind us today and get on with our job of delivering value for the city. For that reason, I intend to move the following. Give that to Michael so that he can. Firstly, that Council determines that there has been a material breach of the Code of Conduct. Secondly, that Council has today received an apology from the Mayor which satisfies the recommendation of the independent report. Thirdly, that Council resolves to send a letter of censure to the Mayor. Fourthly, that Council determines that no other action would be in the broader public interest at this time. If there is a seconder for that motion, then I will open it for discussion and people will be free to make whatever comments they wish. If that motion is then resolved, then that will conclude this meeting. If that motion fails, then we will go on to discuss other possible remedies. So I will ask at this point if there is a seconder for this motion, which has actually just been put up on the board now. So let's just wait until it's typed and put up there. So there is the motion from the chair. Is there a seconder?
Yep.
Pardon? Okay, thank you. So, well, Grant, I took you first. Do you want to exercise the right of the seconder to make comment?
My only question would be with respect to, in addition to the apology that the Mayor's we've received via the minutes, or the agenda, sorry, the public apology. So a statement to the public of Invercargill acknowledging the anxiety that, you know, this incident's caused for them, and putting it behind us from a public perspective.
Do you mean, Grant, that that should be given verbally, because it is actually included in his, I mean, he's written one as I apologise to my colleagues for the impact on them and to the Invercargill public.
Yeah.
Are you saying that it should be verbal?
No, well, I think it needs to be construed in a way that the public feels that they've received an apology as well. So whether, and probably looking for feedback from other members of council, whether they feel as though what's written here does satisfy that level, but I certainly think there should be our public, you know, needs to feel as though the mayor's apologised and we've moved forward.
Okay. So just before I leave Grant, Grant, you're saying that you would second it, but only with the proviso that some additional words were added about the need to make a separate public apology?
Well, I'm happy to second it as it is, but I'd be interested in my fellow members' discussion around that public.
So we get to that point then. So so it is seconded.
Yeah.
So we now open it for discussion. And Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I disagree with Councillor, fellow Councillor Dermody. This is a public meeting. We've got the media here. The meeting's been Zoomed. People are watching it throughout the country. I think what's up there is correct. You should stand by that.
So, Darren, sorry I missed you before. You put your hand up first.
It's quite all right, thank you, Chair. If you'll indulge me, I wasn't here for June, so this might take a couple of minutes. Firstly, to the motions that have been put, I don't disagree with them. I'm also not really interested in wasting my time in futile acts, because having gone through the previous term, which resulted in the working together process, that was probably the most traumatic thing one of the most traumatic things I've been through in my political career. There is absolutely no doubt that there was a breach of the code, and that the matter at the centre of it caused a great deal of shock and discomfort, and rapidly. I took 2 very aggressive phone calls on the night. When I say aggressive, the people were emotionally charged. They weren't angry at me, and that's our job, to listen to what it is that people have to say. I was out socially the next night, and there was a group of people who were certainly quick to voice their opinions on it. As someone who has not only been a public speaker for some 40 years, but also worked in the media, the situation perpetrated by the New Zealand Today program is irresponsible. It has achieved what they wanted. It got them attention. There are people who perceive it as being news. The show is not a news program. It is a comedy show based on comedy discomfort and real life situations. The original discussion, as I understand it, was quite a lengthy one about co-governance, and the comments that were made that have been at the centre of the Code of Conduct complaint came at the end. But also, as a former editor, I understand why they would attract more attention. But it's not news, and it has become news, and it's really unhelpful. Thanks, Guy. Don't come back. People are hurt by what the Mayor had to say, and rightly and understandably. It was a tremendously uncomfortable watch. It was a lapse of judgment, and I read with interest the the statement from Mayor Clark in response to the Wynne Williams investigation. And it meets the requirements of what were suggested at a minimum. And by that I mean barely. I don't get a sense of the level of remorse I would have appreciated reading from a community leader. Even though that might be how he feels and we don't know, it's not apparent. I don't think the previous apology that appeared in Stuff was an apology, it was more a statement of I suppose I should apologise. I think a letter of censure is the wisest option simply because it clarifies in the public mind what actually has been happening for the last 2 years anyway. When the Mayor is invited somewhere, the Mayor is invited to speak, and he does so, and he puts forward his opinions, which it is his prerogative to do, as it is for any of us who are invited to do the same. What it isn't, though, is a representation of the opinions of council. And the number of times that I've had feedback from people saying, oh, but the Mayor said such and such, is substantial. And my response has always been, yes, but the Mayor is the leader of council, not the decision maker. That's council. And people don't really understand that. There are all the other options, and I think you thoroughly examined them during your meeting in June, and you saw the response. Because everything else is really, for want of a better term, a wet bus ticket. And that's why it's not useful. You know, if there was a motion to ask the Mayor to resign, you know he's not going to. But clarifying in the public mind, when the Mayor speaks, he's speaking for himself, I think is useful. I think there's still an opportunity, which I really hope is taken up, to follow on from what Councillor Dermody suggested just a few minutes ago, and that we have the written response here, but it's hard to judge the emotion behind it because it's written. We could hear the passion with which Councillor Pottinger spoke at the beginning of the meeting. You know, that's something that's palpable, and I'd be interested in what Mayor Clark had to say about it at some point. It is an embarrassing moment. It was and is a distraction from actually what we ended up achieving in the last term, which is getting on with the job and delivering, which is happening in a really positive way. I think I've found by and large this council to be pretty constructive in what it's achieved and how it goes about it. You're never going to get 15 people in one space, my apologies, who are going to agree with each other, and nor should you, because you want some tension to thrash things out. What we don't need is this type of tension and unwelcome distraction. So in conclusion, Chair, I support the four motions as they sit, and if at the end of it Councillor Dermody wants to add something else, I would probably support that as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, look, we'll test the feelings of other members, and we can come back to that. It'd be very easy to add a few words to say that we would recommend that the Mayor delivers that in person. Evelyn, you're next.
This, I thought I would never have to say this again. This is not the reason I came to represent Waihopai Runaka, to discuss the ill-considered comments of our Mayor. But I find myself in this position again and the people for whom I'm speaking, and the reason that I want to say this, I do not consider that the criteria for an apology has been met. I don't have a problem with the other three parts of the motion, but this is not the first apology in quotation marks, that we have received from the Mayor. But the behaviour and the choice of words, the ill-considered choice of words continues. This doesn't come out of just what, to me, what was said during the Guy Williams interview. There were numerous television, radio and print interviews that followed this, where the Mayor doubled down on the choice of words and feeling that he didn't have to apologise for saying it, that it was okay, that it was a little bit hilarious, notoriety. I think somewhere in some of the comments was all publicity is good publicity, and I'm not sure it came out of his mouth, but somebody's. This is not true. If you are a young person of colour who lives in this city, who is not sure of their gender identity or is very sure of their gender identity, you've got 2 strikes against you in the eyes of the Mayor, given the words that were said or the inferences that were made in that interview. And that's not been addressed. To say that the interview was not good is not addressing the real issues that are in there, the real harm that has been done to people who have to live with the impact of those words. We've talked consistently at this table about the young people who are not engaged with us, who don't like going out into the community because of the bullying. This is a form of bullying. The use of words, the N word, the F word. I've raised children who have had to deal with that in real life, not just as a theory. Having to address to young children what it feels like to be demonised because of something over which they have no control, which is their ethnicity, over something over which they have no control, which is how they express love and to whom they express it. Now, I know that everybody does not accept that sexuality is something that you're born with, that it is not a choice. But when you look after children who are so harmed and damaged by this, and we think that what the Mayor has said and the kind of wording in his apology is acceptable, is enough. No, it is not enough. What needs to be said is, I, William Clark, apologise to those people for whom this is a lived experience and whose experience I treated so lightly. To be othered, those people. I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people whose partner, when he was in the Navy, was called by the N word, and who's had all the different varieties of that word thrown at him over the years. I have raised children who have that. I have grandchildren who may experience that. This is not an adequate apology to us as a table, to the citizens of this city, and most specifically, not to people who are brown and queer. It is just not. I don't know whether the Mayor understands that his wording is less than fulsome. less than explicit, but the fact that he went on not just at the time that this recording was made, but after this recording was published, and treated it as less than serious, treated it as less than damaging, to me needs to be addressed by him in person, publicly. I don't get a vote. I'm okay with the fact that I don't get a vote. I've had my say, but I think that I would expect that those who are listening to my voice, who do have a vote, actually take this seriously. If you are not the parent of a child that is affected by this, you may be the parent or grandparent of a child that may be affected by this. You don't know that. But I have done that parenting. I am that parent, I am that grandparent, I am that sister, I am that aunt. And I have to tell you that the messages that I am getting are from those who are young, brown and queer. And they feel definitely othered. They feel definitely damaged and harmed by the power of the mayor's words. Anybody who uses those words is misusing language and damaging people. But when you are the mayor of the city and you don't take seriously the responsibility that your fellow citizens have given you, I really don't know how we as a table can get through to the Koromatua just the impact, whether he is speaking on his own behalf or not, the impact on the power of his choice of words. So if I had one thing to say, it's really to my fellow table members. Find the courage to actually let the mayor know that his apology is not sufficient, that the tone and the choice of words is not deep and meaningful, and that he needs to really reflect and get some help on how he thinks about people who are very definitely entitled to be proud members of this community. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Look, I don't think there's any doubt that we are going to come back now and massage the wording of the apology clause up there. So let's take it for granted that we will circle around and do that. Trish, I think you're next. Yep, Trish.
It's really probably covered what I was going to say was about the apology, and we'll come back to that. But I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the work that was done for this Code of Conduct report. I think it's thorough and well researched, and it's given us good information.
Thank you. Barry.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with the recommendations up there. I was told when I met the mayor originally that his door was always open. And in some respects, I've seen in this instance, particularly this instance here, that option was not taken up. It really disappoints me. That the mayor has got the opportunity, because we've got an upcoming main council meeting next Tuesday. If he desires, he could say something there.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Panya.
I too think the apology is inadequate, because once again we are gathered to address the disturbing pattern of conduct by our mayor, which has repeatedly raised concerns among both councillors, mana whenua,
Panya, you're going to
and
bring
our
the microphone a
communities.
little closer. I'm struggling to hear you. Thank you. I'm sorry, you lost your train of thought.
I'll start
but
again.
I just couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. Once again, we are gathered to address the disturbing pattern of conduct by our mayor, which has repeatedly raised concerns amongst our councillors, mana whenua, and communities. The multiple instances of disrespect, insults, humiliation, offence, and discrimination are unacceptable and fail to meet the standard of leadership expected from a mayor. It is disheartening to see toxic and dysfunctional behaviour become a norm in our council. When an individual behaves, disputes the working environment, causing stress to colleagues and undermining trust, we must address this promptly. As such, I believe a vote of non-confidence warrants the behaviour. It is necessary for the Mayor to step back from his duties to allow the council to recover and for him to address the negative behavioural patterns. To our elected councillors, we expect our leaders to uphold the highest standards of integrity, transparency and accountability at all times. I urge you to take these allegations of breaches of the Code of Conduct seriously and request that you set aside personal bias and emotions and instead carefully consider the severity of the incidents and patterns of behaviour that have caused harm. As a mana whenua representative, I expect you to uphold your responsibilities to protect not only the council and staff, but also the communities we serve, ensuring their well-being and safety are paramount. That's how I feel. Kia ora.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to thank Reverend Cook in particular for your comments today. Thank you. This may be seen as futile, but I'll use my voice today. I want to start with a line from our Code of Conduct that continues to resonate with me as we have these discussions around this table today. Invercargill City Council elected members have an important and privileged role representing the people of Invercargill. I also want to say, none of us are perfect, we get that. We all make mistakes, and we have to do our best to lead with grace and understanding towards each other around this table, despite where we may differ politically. But I also believe this important and privileged role is one that through repeated negative actions and behaviour we can and should lose. Particularly if this behaviour is disrespectful, discourteous, insulting, degrading, offensive and/or discriminatory. If it is not stopped on request, if it appears to be intentional, malicious and motivated by ill will, if it causes serious reputational harm to this council, if it is part of an ongoing pattern of behaviours and breaches, and if it represents a major departure from expected standards. You've read the report, those are words from that report. 6th of March 2023, our Mayor attended an arts event and used language that none of us will be using today, I imagine, because we know. Right there in that moment, grace and understanding should rightly have been applied to our Mayor. There was an opportunity right there for reflection, learning, and apologies for comments and offences that may have been caused. 8th of March, One News, an interview, according to the report, use of the word that none of us will be using today because we know, another 6 times by our Mayor, and a refusal to apologise. 9th of March, 3 News, according to the report, use of the word again that none of us will be using today because we know why. Another 8 times by our Mayor, and a refusal again to apologise. Mid-2023, finally we get to the New Zealand Today interview. Following an opportunity to turn down the request for an interview by Guy Williams, the Mayor, representing this council and our city, chose to invite a conversation into our city's mayoral lounge that he knew would be broadcast nationally. Following the opportunity right there to reflect and attempt to bring some good to a fairly bad situation at that point, instead our Mayor repeatedly and provocatively, words from the report, challenges the interviewer to say a word that is universally understood to be obscene. Then goes on to question the interviewer's sexuality, chucks in the word bent, and uses another word to describe homosexuals that none of us, I imagine, will be using today, because we know why. The report states that these repeated instances are likely to have caused significant reputational damage to this council, the office of the Mayor, and the city of Invercargill. At this point, April 2023, there might be some grace left in the tank towards our Mayor. He makes an apology, and I quote, "I guess it's appropriate for me to apologise to anyone who felt offended." This was after he blamed the media for cut and pasting and maintained that the majority of the community had received the interview with Guy Williams positively. I'm not sure who the Mayor is talking to or whether he's aware that it is very normal and very achievable to host an event or interview without saying the N-word. That should be a pretty low-level expectation we have as a council of our Mayor. I think the Mayor needs to take far greater responsibility for the words that freely leave his mouth. The Mayor's apology was described in the report as being directed to those offended rather than actually acknowledging misconduct, and was absent of remorse, again, from the report. I wanted to finish with just a few more lines from the report. The report was great. The overall impression was of a Mayor who was deliberately and gratuitously provocative, who is willing to use racial and homophobic slurs and implications recklessly, and who does so with little to no regard for how offensive such language and behaviour is likely to be for members of the public at large, and minority communities in particular. Mayor Clark must have been, and was in fact aware that his language and other conduct would be regarded as offensive, demeaning and discriminatory by members of the public, but he chose to conduct himself in this manner regardless. One thing I won't do as a councillor around this table is expect minority groups to shoulder the weight of offensive behaviour directed towards them by our Mayor. Because for many of those groups, I imagine, and I can speak from some experience, it has been a weight that those groups have carried for much of their lives. Sadly, for them, it may be normal or familiar. But it should never be seen as normal behaviour from the leader of our city. And any offence here should be shared by all members sitting around this table. We don't just have an opportunity today, but I believe a duty to stand in the gap and say, enough, this is not who we are, that we will not accept, we will not tolerate, we will not condone or normalise within this council behaviour that has been described again as disrespectful, discourteous, insulting, degrading, offensive and or discriminatory, was not stopped on request, appears to be intentional, malicious and motivated by ill will, caused serious reputational harm to this council and this city, and is a part of an ongoing pattern of behaviours and breaches. Again, a seat around this table is a privilege that can be lost, and it has been by several who came before. Some of you around this table have been very vocal in the past when you believe that behaviour fell short of the honour of this council. I may be a minority voice around this table today, but following this report and its findings, I believe that any decision that is less than requesting our Mayor to resign falls short of our duty as city councillors.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here we are again in the latest chapter of the series of embarrassments that we've, just had, even the ones that have just managed to make our table. I draw your attention to Councillor Ludlow not 15 minutes ago, where he misspoke and said that there were 13 members around the table, and there are actually 15. Within seconds of his omission, he apologised. He said, "Oh, my apologies." He did not double down and repeat it or reinforce it or make a public spectacle out of the issue. Mr. Williams in the report it suggests, and in the interview, Mr. Guy Williams suggests that Mayor Clark is ignorant and he needs to learn and improve. This leads to the following exchange. Mayor Clark says, "I feel I don't have to do that." Mr. Williams says, "You need to because we need to learn and move forward as a society." Mayor Clark says, "No, the only way our society moves forward is to take those people you describe out." And Mr. Williams says, "Those people?" The Mayor says, "Well, I can't use that N-word because you ... Who are those people? Who are those others? What this really demonstrates is that the Mayor will certainly not move on this. And so Councillor Ludlow was quite correct. We went through the working together process last term, and really, there's not a lot we can do, or not a lot that we can force the Mayor to do, but there is things that we can do to request. There is signals that we can send to the public. I do not believe, and to your point, Deputy Mayor, that for point 4 of the recommendation there, that determines that no other action would be in the broader public interest at this time. I do not believe that the Invercargill public, for a second, would believe that accepting this kind of behaviour and normalising it is in public interest. I do not for a second believe that that is in public interest. You are right. None of our recommendations, or none of the recommendations that have been outlined in the report are enforceable, but it does send a very strong signal. And I, like Councillor Broad and Reverend Cook, determined that anything other than a call for his resignation again or a vote of no confidence falls well short when the Mayor has issued a 4-bullet point apology that says it's not good. It's not good. It's the bare minimum. It's derogatory, it's dehumanising and degrading behaviour. It's just not on. We can't walk past it. We can lead the horse to water, but we cannot force him to drink, but we can send an extremely strong signal that this is just not okay. It's 2024.
Okay, any other comments? Actually, Alan, you're the only person I don't think has had the opportunity. Do you want to make any comment?
Not really. I mean, I probably agree with pretty much what's on the board at this particular point in time. I think his apologies have been sincere in my view, but I'm listening to everybody else here and there's some good points being made. But at the end of the day, I think he'll learn from this, everybody will learn from this, and I think it will make him a better person and a better man.
Sorry,
There's I think the critical issue for me we've heard some really heartfelt comments. I don't think anybody should assume that because we don't want to go down a particular pathway, people are not equally insulted or equally, hurt by the comments. The question is pragmatically whether we achieve anything by going in that direction, whether it achieves anything other than sticking a spoke in the wheel of, the progress that Council are making to try to achieve a pretty ambitious set of objectives for next year. It would be a gesture which would be well received by some. I've got absolutely no doubt it would be a gesture that would allow us to hold our head up high and say that we, that we did the right moral thing. But if it means that we don't achieve things that we have in our plan because we have end up with a dysfunctional relationship between Council and the Mayor, then I don't think we've achieved anything at all, actually. Evelyn, I'll take you.
I think Councillor Cricket was before me.
Oh, sorry, I've been lost.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to have a little korero about that, what you've sort of implied there, Deputy Mayor, that doing the moral thing here might create some sort of fracture between councillors and the Mayor himself. And like Councillor Ludlow quite rightly pointed out earlier, that this is a decision-making body of 15 people, not just the Mayor. So the Mayor, albeit he has extensive powers, he is not the entire decision-making body of this council, and I still believe that we as a council can be very collegial and work together excellently as we have over the last term, regardless whether or not the Mayor has been here or not. And that has been rightly demonstrated when you've been standing in for the Mayor, that this council is still functional and we're still getting the work done, regardless whether or not the Mayor is here or not.
Okay, Evelyn, you want to comment?
Yes, at the risk of delving into the hyperbolic, the pragmatic attitude of not addressing some things that we find uncomfortable or that will make it a little bit more challenging to work with one person is probably what has enabled a lot of the very worst atrocities that this world has ever seen to happen. It's always uncomfortable to challenge a very loud voice or a very powerful voice who says things that you know are unacceptable. I do believe that we have come to a place in the life of this council where we do need to stand up for all of the citizens, not just think about business or think about whatever. Councillor Cricket is right. Despite all the things that went on last term, all the things that have gone on this term, we have sat round this table and worked harmoniously together. We're not clones of one another, we don't always agree, but we have always managed to be civil. if one person cannot be civil to the rest of us because we're growling at them, then that person is the person with the problem. We cannot, I believe, allow our concern about whether that will be disruptive to our progress over the next few months to stop us from delivering this really serious message to the person who chairs the most important meetings of this body. And like Councillor Crackett, Deputy Mayor, I want to say that we have managed under your chair, under the chairs of Councillor Pottinger, of Councillor Ludlow, and now Councillor Soper, we have managed to do sorry, who have I missed out? Sorry, Councillor Dermody. Absolutely unintentional. You haven't been here for some time, I forgot. We've managed to do all these things, but we can't just say it might be uncomfortable working with a person that we've had a good growling at. We can't let it go because it will be uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for us. It's not a pleasant place to be. But this message, if we are to be taken seriously just as human beings, we need to deliver this message to the person who chairs and is the nominal face of this city at this time. Please be courageous. Please say the right words. Please show those young, brown, queer people that you think about them, not just the business people, or not just ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion has been put and seconded. I do propose, given comments about number 2, that we do add some words to that, but wishes, maybe just as the sentence as it is, but adds, but wishes that the Mayor deliver their apology personally to the public. Yeah, so I think the word is but rather than and, actually. But that the apology be made in person and in public. So what I'll do is put that motion, it's already been seconded. If the motion fails, okay, I'm not sure through the sentence, so if the motion fails, then I will ask for another motion from anyone who might wish to make it. Trish, you were first, and then Alex can go again.
I feel that there needs to be a little bit more for number 2. I believe it needs to be acknowledged that it needs to be a public apology as well, and that it is to be remorseful, to show remorse for what's happened.
So do you want to wordsmith it for me? It does say and in public, but I take the point that there is nothing about remorse in it. Do you want to wordsmith it?
Might I suggest?
Yes.
Sorry. Might I suggest that we resolved as a council on the back of the last code of conduct report to request that the Mayor issues his apology in the similar fashion to which the original offence had occurred, not a public lynching, as you rightly. Anyway, the fact that maybe the apology would be most appropriate delivered in person at a full council meeting, having written and read or potentially wordsmithed it himself with his remorseful feelings.
Made in person at a
At
public
full-
council meeting?
Yeah,
Yes.
or at full council. That way it's consistent with the previous request.
Full council.
And the public has access to that.
Okay.
It's live streamed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I think the word apology implies remorse. Trish, but if you can think of a better adjective, then I'm happy to.
report
I think
says
it's the
that.
sincerity that people are questioning, and that, of course, is perception as well. I'm not sure that, Evelyn, have you got a word?
I think that it's so non-specific. It doesn't actually address what the
issue
real
Doesn't address the
harm has
behaviour.
been. And as I've been sitting here, I've been also thinking that apart from anybody else, there are two people in particular that he needs to apologise to, and that is the two councillors, because they've actually been attacked as well. But we'll leave that aside. I don't get to vote. I think something that indicates that he acknowledges the actual words. So just saying, I'm sorry about the interview, or it was a poor choice, or whatever, doesn't acknowledge the choice of language that he used. And somehow I think that needs to be included in the apology. But again, that's for the mayor to do. We can only indicate our expectation. I imagine that he's watching this, he's hearing what we're saying, he's getting the message. That would be what would be healing for me, or, well, healing's
Evelyn,
probably wrong word.
I know that no single word is going to cover all the things that you're saying, but Michael has just prompted
Sincere.
me actually that the word that's sincere may be helpful, a sincere apology. Maybe captures, the essence of what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes, Graham.
Deputy Mayor, just Evelyn, to address
Fixed.
your concerns there, the recommendations of the independent report, it's in significant detail around the words and language and those sorts of things. So does that capture it by reflecting through that report,
So,
as opposed to spelling out specifically in the recommendation?
so
It
it'd be
refers to the
a
independent
sincere,
report.
yeah, a sincere.
Yeah, look, I think rather than try to wordsmith the apology for him,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we can judge having heard it whether it's sincere or not, I guess. But I think the word sincere probably captures, the core of what people are saying.
Force sincerity.
Well, thank you.
Hey?
Oh, Michael, sorry. I was trying to figure out who that was, Michael.
Through yourself, Chair, I was just going to highlight you'll need the seconder to approve the
Yeah,
amended
thank you.
recommendation.
So Grant, will you second it in that form?
Yes.
So let me just say again that I will put that motion. If the motion fails, then we will move on, and I will ask for someone to make another motion to take its place. So I will put it. So it's been put and it's been seconded, so we'll do it by show of hands. So all those in favour of that, please raise your hand. 7. So, so those against, Stevie, you, okay. So thank you all. I think we will close the meeting at this point. Is there any other business that? Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, did you put all of the motions? I thought you were
Yeah,
doing.
That's why I didn't.
I'll say
thought-
that again.
Sorry, I thought you said that you were going to do them individually, and then.
No, what I said was, but I mean, I'm happy to do them individually, but I asked when Grant seconded them, I was moving all 4.
Yeah.
When Grant seconded them, I took him to be seconding all 4.
I was,
I put all 4, and it was approved. Are you saying, Alex, that you would have not voted as you did if you had known that?
Correct. I thought that we were taking 1 and 2 because the 2 was having amendments made to it, and then there would be discussion on 3 and 4.
Okay.
I
Well,
did the same, Chair, because I didn't agree with number 4, so.
Yeah.
we can
So
do
I'm
that.
happy to backtrack in that then and do that with Alex if you misunderstood that. So we will take number 1 and number 2 and Grant, are you still happy to second those?
Yes. Yep.
So all those in favour, raise your hand, of 1 and 2. That's unanimous. Number 3, the council resolves to send a letter of censure to the mayor. So I have already moved that. Grant, do you still wish to second it?
Yes.
So discussion at that point.
If you put that motion individually and then the fourth individually, yeah.
Sorry, I don't understand. You
It's just point 3.
Point 3.
point 3. So, right. So, no discussion of point 3 on its own. Okay. What you say? Okay. So all those in favour say aye. Oh, Evelyn, sorry.
Just a question, that who drafts the letter of censure? Given that this is something that comes from us, is that for you to draft that?
Well, I don't personally. The last time it was drafted by actually the author of the report, and it then went from there to Andrew Cameron, I think, who did some work on it, and the chair of audit and risk, I think, also did some work on it. So there were kind of 3 draftees, but fundamentally the basic letter was written by, what was her name? Linda, wasn't it?
Linda Clark.
Linda Clark, was written by Linda Clark. Now that was considered, I think, a little bit unusual, if I'm honest, that the investigator should be the person who writes the letter. I had that comment from a number of people, but I mean, it really should be left to the executive. I mean, I won't write it. No one in council will write the letter.
The reason I asked the question is that I don't want any inference by anybody that this is a staff drafted letter of censure, because I think our staff have a difficult enough time with these challenges that are in front of them, and how do we resolve this if we don't have the courage to write the letter?
Well, I signed the letter. We're talking about who actually, physically drafts the words, and and that's going to be done by probably not me. But I signed it, right?
Yeah.
So it came from me,
Yeah.
and you've got a copy of that in the papers. But
I
Matt,
have
would
no
you want to
concern.
comment on the?
I can comment, Chair. I have no concern with drafting a letter.
Say that again. Sorry.
I have no concern with drafting a letter myself.
Yes, no.
It's just giving action to our resolution if he's comfortable with doing
The intention is it must come from the council. So who actually puts the information together? When Tom puts his signature to it, you must be very clear, Tom, that this is what the council members want and mean.
Okay. So yes.
Through yourself, Chair, look, I'm happy to take it from the side that we will arrange for that letter to be drafted to come from the Deputy Mayor, if that is what Council's wanting on their behalf. But that would be something that I'd action through our legal team. So the comment from my staff is that we would obviously draft it from a legal sense, but I don't think it needs to be in there that it's being drafted from that, because it will be signed off from either the Deputy Mayor or full council.
I mean, it doesn't have to be signed off by me. I mean, the reason that, well, the additional reason that I did it last time was because I was actually acting mayor at the time as opposed to deputy mayor. But Mayor Clark is back now, so it's a slightly different situation. But it's up to council how they wish to do, whether they would wish to have that letter signed by all councillors, which it could be, or at least all who support that. Or alternately, it can just be signed by me. Yes.
I think, Chair, you offer a very good solution in that councillors have expressed themselves admirably today, and it would be an opportunity for them to see the letter before it goes to the mayor, and if each person involved who wishes to chooses to sign it, I think that adds additional weight.
Okay, well, I don't see any process issue with doing it that way, Michael, do you? So if Andrew would be the main draftee, yeah, Andrew.
I suppose the process issue that I would see with that, and I would just consider it, I suppose, Is it all signed? Those who want to sign, those who want to comment. I mean, the problem you have with going down that path is you'll relitigate this through the letter of censure. I'm happy to draft it. I'm either happy to draft it with Mr. Shaw as the author, as we did last time, or I'm happy to draft it with the Chair of Risk and Assurance and provide it to someone. But I think you run a risk. I think it may be, if you were going to pass that resolution, it would need to be the letter to come from the Deputy Mayor with signatures added by anyone else who wish to. That might work, but I think circulating it will just raise a blockage.
Well, how would you get?
I wasn't
how would you
offering
get-
it for editing, Chair, but Mr Cameron suggests a good outcome there. Those who choose to can add.
Well, I mean, I think it is more powerful if councillors sign it.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that. I think you're right that we don't really want an issue where we try to have a letter drafted by a committee, which is, you know, never works. It was all over the place. But so I mean, I would suggest to councillors that unless there is something that they feel strongly in the letter that they would have or not have, then we try to accept the letter of censure as it is. But Alex.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I don't mean to keep flogging a dead horse, but I don't believe that it would be appropriate for us to send it around and have councillors decide to opt a signature or not, because what that does is provide the opportunity to effectively circumvent the democratic decision that we're making today. Where if we make the decision to send the letter of censure, it's everybody in the same waka, rowing in the same direction, putting out the same information. If you send the letter around and go, oh, do you want to sign this or not, it flies in the face of the democratic decision we're making. So it's either we sign the letter, the resolution goes through, we sign the letter, you sign it on our behalf, and that's that.
So,
Sorry,
Alex, I think you make a very, very good point, actually. And what I would suggest is that we do circulate it. We do allow people to comment if they wish.
Sure, but the signing
but then
thing
it
is
comes
just-
back and only I'll sign it, because otherwise you're quite right. If there's 8 out of 12 sign it or something, then it's a... Yes,
So
Trish.
in saying that also, we must be fair. If we do circulate the letter, it must be, councillors must understand that it is for their eyes only, and so that it comes back, because it would be unfair if people outside the council saw it before the mayor saw it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the letter of censure will eventually be public.
Yes.
So it's the issue is not whether it's public or not, it's the order in which
Yes.
things are done that you're saying, Trish. Yeah, I would agree with that. So where did we get to? I've lost my place. Okay, so I don't know that the words need to change there, do they? I mean, we've just agreed the process, so I will put motion 3. Do you want to second it again, Grant? All those in favour, raise their hand. Anyone against? Okay, that one is carried. So now we come to motion 4. The purpose of that motion was, the purpose of number 4, to my mind, was to try to allow people who felt strongly about it to support the motion on the basis of the balance of public good. That was the purpose. But I accept that through the discussion that's not necessarily where we've landed. So I'm happy to take, I will move that though, and we can modify it if we need to. Again, Grant, do you want to second it as it is or not?
Yeah, I probably want to hold off seconding it till we hear discussion,
Okay.
because I accept there is the no other action piece is probably the piece that's...
So before it can be included, it needs to be seconded. So will somebody second it?
I'll second on the basis.
Okay. So discussion on that point. And I would be, let me just say before we go into it, I mean, I'd be quite happy to delete that point if people don't like it, or to wordsmith it if people would prefer it written in another way. I've told you the reason I included it was to just try to show that we are actually trying to balance two not necessarily positive things. So discussion on that? Yes, Dan.
Thanks, Chair. I would support its deletion because it's really a depends. Because if 2 isn't very good, it's not the end.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm also not really interested in dragging this on. And I think we're all kind of in that space, but at this point, I couldn't support it.
Someone else? Evelyn?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say what Councillor Ludlow said, that I either delete it in whole or take out no further action be taken at this time. It's the broader public interest, but really disturbs me because it's actually not in the broader public interest to allow behaviour like this to continue.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're
That was my point.
proposing that it be removed, I think.
Either for, if that is the consensus of the table, that 4 be deleted entirely, or that it be amended that no further action be taken at this time.
Well, that kind of goes without saying
No,
almost
just
really.
delete
But it does leave the potential for
It's a big presumption around what public interest is.
further action.
Okay, so I understand the distinction that you're drawing out. Would anybody wish to argue that it continues in its current form?
No.
No, okay. Yes, Michael?
Sorry, but I just want to highlight on process that it's currently a motion on the table.
So you move
So it's been moved and seconded, so it either needs to be voted against from everyone and then be removed.
You can
or-
add something if we wish. Okay then, so I will put the motion. The motion is that we include option 4. So if that does not succeed, then option 4 will be removed. Okay, and again, I'm just trying to follow the process rather than. So I'll put that. So all those in favour of continuing to include option 4, raise their hand. Okay, so that motion fails. Does anybody wish to move that we add anything else to that? Any variation? My own suspicion is that by removing it, you know, I don't know any other way. I take the point Evelyn is making, but it completely changes the sense of the sentence. It's not just a wordsmithing, it's actually. Okay. Yes, Alan.
I was just going to say with that option 4, what I see is that, you know, once we do what we're doing here and everything is theoretically resolved, apologised for, then I think we need to put this to bed and move on, and that's what the number 4 does. So I do support that number 4 as it was, except without at this time. We've got to move on.
That's not what that says, though.
So number 4, the fact number 4 does not have to be there to achieve that, Alan. It's number 4 is there to kind of double say it. But if you take number 4 out, it doesn't change that fact. That basically we are moving on because we've only done 1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Grant.
Yeah, so can I move that we actually delete option 4?
So I'll take that.
Failed as a motion, it's gone.
It fails,
Yeah,
it's
it's
gone.
So that,
Councillors, I've just kept it there until you decide whether there was going to be any alternative motion along similar wording, and then it'll be deleted.
Yeah.
if
so
there's
it's
not.
already deleted, is it?
Yes.
So we've
Okay.
agreed to the,
Okay then.
Okay.
Thank you. So yes, Alex.
Do we want to add a motion to Councillor Ludlow's point? And I know that there have been a couple of other penalties, I suppose, thrown around the table this afternoon, given that there was a potential opportunity for, or recommendation for for a vote of no confidence. I don't know if that's the right thing to do either, because I think the resolution that we passed with the previous code of conduct and the letter of censure effectively does give voice to a vote of no confidence, in particular around this, the public-facing activity. There was also conversation about anything less than asking for his resignation is not in the best public interest. I guess the question is that I'm looking to determine, and welcome Councillor Soper, is did anybody have a fourth motion that they wanted to put on the table in regards to either of those suggestions?
I think that's an inappropriate question, actually, Alex. I think you either move that or you don't. So, I mean, I think if you wish to move that either of these two things are included, then you may make that motion and we can vote on it. I don't think it's fair to ask somebody else to do
No,
it.
no, 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 it was more, just because I just don't want anybody to leave this table feeling unsettled or,
Well, I think
or that they
everybody
haven't
will
had a
leave
result,
this.
so
I think
that's fine.
everybody will leave this table feeling unsettled. This doesn't actually solve any of the problems.
I think it's a depends thing, councillor. It's a depends thing
Yeah,
on two.
yeah. So, yeah, and that was, again, got to be my follow-up question if the answer was no. Was that do we want to, or do we see it necessary to add a 6-month review of the outcomes of anything that has happened? No? We're just going to leave it?
Well, that's actually
At that point.
automatic, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because if the mayor did something which conflicted with the code of conduct, we'd be back here anyway.
Yeah, okay.
You don't have to include it in this. Yes, Leslie.
When you say, and my apologies for lateness, but I was in a court, so it was difficult to be here earlier. When you say that's automatic, what are you alluding to?
Well, what I was meaning was that presumably if we had a review in 6 months' time, as Alex was mooting, then what we would be responding to would be some action of the mayor which was, let's say, inappropriate. And that being the case, he would have fallen foul of the code of conduct anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we really want to come back here in 6 months' time to talk about the same thing, unless there has been a new incident?
No, unless there's
Definitely
another
not.
repeated chapter.
I mean, I still want to be here in 6 months,
So-
but not
so-
discussing.
Certainly if there was another code of conduct, we would
Sure.
be back here
Yeah,
in
that's
6
right.
months' time,
Absolutely.
or earlier. And that
Yeah,
is
well,
the
yeah,
concern.
I mean, it would be responding to that rather than as a consequence of
Yeah.
anything that we put here. Yes, Trish?
I think there's a very clear message from all of the councillors here that we are absolutely disappointed and what's the word I want? We cannot have this kind of behaviour at all again. And I'm sure if the message that we're giving is a very clear message, and that's the end of it.
Okay. So, yes, Evelyn?
Can I just clarify for myself, are we talking about we can only, which I think is the tenor of Councillor Crickett's question, we can only investigate if it rises to the level of a code of conduct again, or do we, which I think is the question that Councillor Crickett was posing, if there's continuing low-level transgressions that don't rise to the level of a code of conduct, how do we address that? So the othering of people, or those sorts of remarks that have happened and we have struggled to address, that are not necessarily as egregious as the N word or the F word or whatever, but are still nevertheless quite destructive to how people feel around the table. Is that the question that Councillor Crackett was asking? And if so, is that the kind of review question that is being raised as an issue?
Well, we are dealing specifically with this particular matter. And anything that the mayor does, or any of us do, unless it breaches the code of conduct, we don't actually have any formal regress. So I don't know that it would add anything, Evelyn. But I mean, I'm happy if somebody wants to put a motion number 4. I'm happy that we vote on that. Yes, Evelyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It might, and I'm sorry to have to ask this, it might help me if I could have resolution 2 explained a little bit more. I'm presuming that the apology being referred to is the very brief note that was attached as an appendix.
We spent half an hour on that item before you came, Councillor, and we've already resolved that. I really don't want to
Yeah,
go
and
back to
that's
number
what,
two.
that's what I'm asking you.
It is
wanted
a
the
new apology.
clarification.
We're asking him to make a further apology in public verbally, rather than what's included in the agenda at the moment, which is a lot fuller than we had before, but the feeling is that he should be prepared to give that apology publicly.
So resolution 2 is definitely aimed at the point I would have made, that the second apology that's attached to the agenda was not a sufficient apology to
Well, that was
be acceptable.
that was the comment that was made, and that's why the word sincere was added, because there was a opinion that the wording of the second apology was not sufficiently expressed in sincerity. May have been very sincere, but the wording was not necessarily crafted well enough to express that.
So resolution 2 is saying that we have today received that apology which satisfies the recommendation of the independent report. I have a slight problem with it satisfying the recommendation of the independent report.
Well, with respect, Councillor, you should have been here half an hour ago when we were talking about it. I'm not going to go back again with it. We spent a long time talking about this, and we've resolved it.
This has been crafted, and
Yeah.
the table has agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unanimously.
So, look, so I'm still on 4, whether anybody would wish to propose a motion 4, and I see, sorry, Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Evelyn is quite right in that if we do not pass a resolution for this code of conduct, for us to have this kind of conversation and to discuss whether or not we are satisfied with the Mayor's public apology and whether or not we, I guess, have seen some improvement in behaviour around the letter of censure, etc. We won't get an opportunity to talk about this unless we put in a minor review item. And I also take the point that nobody really wants to see this drag on forever and ever as well. So can we just not have a 5-minute discussion or a 10-minute discussion at our in our October meeting? So give it a couple of months to ensure that the apology has occurred, the public apology has occurred, he's received a letter of censure, and that everything is collegial. Otherwise, we're not going to get the opportunity to actually say or instill any other, send any other signals, really, unless we elevate another code of conduct, which has to go through
Again,
another
Alex,
investigation and that kind of thing. So I am moving, Mr. Chair.
Right, good. So you want to wordsmith it for me?
Yeah, I would like to move that Council resolves to review the outcomes of today's resolutions in relation to this code of conduct at the October full council meeting.
At the October council meeting.
Oh, do you want to give it September?
That's
Potentially
only
September.
2 months.
Well, that's what I thought. October.
Yeah, I thought you'd have done it a bit later than that, to be
I'm
honest.
going to go October. I think that's a lengthy amount of time for the apology to be received, the dust to settle, any kind of media that arises from this to see what the output of that looks like. And it gives us the opportunity to say, thank you, we felt that remorse this time, hopefully.
So if Councillor Crackett's moving that way, I'll second that. I do
Well,
feel
let's
that
wait till
something
we
additional needs
let's
to
get
be
the words up and see what
put
it
there.
looks like. What are you going to say, within 3 months, or?
Well, within 3 months is probably, yeah. Nah, I'd like to stipulate full council.
October council meeting.
October council meeting gives effect to it. Really, I just want to ensure that, like Councillor Lovelace said before, that there is an opportunity of the what next if the previous 3 resolutions are not satisfied.
Okay. So fundamentally, if you look at the resolutions, that will be whether he has apologised appropriately, because there's no other resolution that requires, action on his part. Okay, so so you're moving that. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. All those in favour by show of hands? So where have we gone? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to follow it. So 5. So I think that does it. Against? 5. So it falls to me to use my casting vote, and I vote as I did with the original vote that we do add this. So that resolution is carried. Please don't anybody say they want a resolution 5.
No.
Okay. Okay, so where do we go to now? Okay, so we, these are really just doing the housekeeping ones. So the first one is, it's become 5, that we received the report titled Code of Conduct Investigation Councillors Bond and Pottinger. Will someone move that we receive that report? Thank you, Trish. Seconded by Grant. Hands up those who support that. Hands up if you support that motion. Okay. Against? Okay, carried. Number 6, note the perceived conflict of interest of councillors, and that is a general conflict of interest that we all share, having a relationship with the mayor. So will someone move that? Okay, thank you. Dan, seconded by Barry. Hands up if you support that. Against? Carried. Okay. Number 7, request in accordance with clause, is that 15.2.21 of the Council Code of Conduct, that the mayor speak to any submissions on the complaints from, well, it's a bit late to say that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit redundant, so I'm not sure that we need that, do we?
Just remove it, given he was an apology.
Right. So did we just delete? Yeah. Thank you.
Very happy with that, Mr. Chair.
What?
Very happy with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other business? Yeah.
Through yourself, Chair, there's just the old number 4 probably still needs to be on there, which was determines there has been a material breach of the Code of Conduct. I'm not sure that was in the original other 4.
I think we said,
That was number 1.
That was number
yeah,
one.
the
Sorry,
council
my apologies,
determines that there has
Councillor.
been a material breach of the Code of Conduct as number 1.
My apologies, Chair.
Okay then, so I will close this meeting. Thank you everyone for sitting through the pain of it. Thank you.